In a small suburban town nestled just outside of Atlanta, Georgia, lived a man named Nathan Carter, a 42-year-old youth counselor known for his empathetic heart and unwavering dedication to helping troubled teens find their way back to hope. Nathan had spent years walking alongside young people battling addiction, depression, and family crises. But there was one topic he found the hardest to address, one that lingered like a silent fog over the lives of many he counseled: sexual sin. This wasn't the kind of issue that people easily brought up during coffee shop conversations or Sunday gatherings. It wasn't the topic neighbors casually chatted about on their front porches while kids played nearby. No, this was the kind of darkness that stayed hidden behind carefully closed doors and forced smiles. Nathan felt it daily, in the confessions whispered with trembling voices in his office, in the tear-streaked faces of parents begging for answers, and in the late-night text messages from kids teetering on the edge of despair. Our culture, loud, proud, and unfiltered, had dressed sin up in appealing costumes. What God called dangerous, society rebranded as normal, liberating, even empowering. Nathan saw it in the music teens listened to, the TV shows they binge-watched, and the endless scroll of social media feeds glorifying what should never have been celebrated. Beneath all the noise and confusion, Nathan knew something deeper. Our bodies were never meant for this kind of destruction. There was a divine design, a sacred blueprint authored by God Himself that protected human hearts, souls, and futures. But every time that design was ignored, the same pattern followed: pain, regret, broken families, spiritual distance, and silent suffering. This wasn't about judgment or shame. Nathan wasn't a man with a pointing finger. He was a man with open arms, desperate to speak the truth that could save lives. Because too many times he had seen marriages fall apart, teenagers spiral into self-hatred, and people of all ages sit in their cars late at night, wondering if they were too far gone to ever find redemption. Today, standing at the podium of a local community center filled with anxious faces, young and old alike, Nathan took a deep breath. He opened his worn Bible and prepared to speak on one of the most avoided, uncomfortable, yet desperately needed subjects of all time: the 5 most devastating sexual sins according to the Bible, and the hope that could break every chain they left behind. This wasn't going to be easy, but it was going to be real, because silence had already done enough damage. As Nathan stood before the packed room, illuminated only by the soft overhead lights of the community center, he noticed a familiar face in the third row: Sophia Green, a single mother of 2 who had been coming to counseling sessions for months. Her eyes, once lively, now carried a dullness Nathan had seen far too often, a weariness born not from lack of sleep, but from the silent battles she fought daily within her soul. Nathan's heart ached for her and for the dozens of others seated before him, each person carrying invisible scars. With a deep breath, he began. "Let's stop pretending this isn't happening," he said, his voice low but urgent. "Let's stop acting like these wounds don't exist." There was a heavy pause in the room. Then came the words that shifted the entire atmosphere. "The enemy of your soul doesn't need to destroy you overnight," Nathan continued. "He's patient, he's subtle, he whispers lies until you start believing them, until what God calls sin starts sounding like freedom, until what once made you blush now feels normal, even celebrated." Eyes widened, backs straightened, something inside the crowd was stirring. Nathan stepped down from the small stage, walking toward the front row as if addressing each person individually. "It starts with little compromises," he said. "A late-night text from someone you shouldn't be texting. A casual hookup you convince yourself is just for fun. Clicking on images online, telling yourself it's harmless. Watching movies filled with scenes that make you numb to what's pure." His voice cracked, but he pressed on. "The world will tell you that as long as you're happy, nothing else matters. That your body is yours alone to use however you want. That love means doing whatever feels right in the moment. But listen to me carefully. God's design isn't about controlling you. It's about protecting you." At that moment, the room felt like it was holding its breath. Nathan grabbed his Bible and flipped to 1 Corinthians 6:18. Flee from sexual immorality, he read aloud. Every other sin a person commits is outside the body, but the sexually immoral person sins against his own body. His voice grew stronger, each word hitting like a hammer breaking through chains. This isn't poetry, this is spiritual reality, Nathan said, locking eyes with several people, including Sophia, who now had silent tears slipping down her cheek. It's not just about breaking a rule, it's about breaking yourself, piece by piece, decision by decision. He looked up at the ceiling, almost as if praying out loud. Too many of you have been told that you're too far gone, that you're damaged goods, that you're dirty beyond repair. The air grew heavier, and some in the crowd audibly sniffled, fighting tears. But that is a lie from the pit of hell, Nathan declared, voice now trembling with passion. You are not too far gone. You are not disqualified from grace. The God who created you still wants you, still waits for you, still loves you more than you can comprehend. Sophia buried her face in her hands, shaking, overwhelmed by a mix of sorrow and hope. Around the room, others sat frozen, wrestling with their own memories, regrets, and quiet prayers. In that single moment, something began to break. The walls of silence, the chains of shame, the illusion that they were alone. Nathan closed his Bible, exhaled slowly, and with eyes full of compassion, simply said, This is where healing begins." Just as Nathan stepped down from the makeshift stage, preparing to end the session for the night, Lucas Morgan, a 28-year-old former high school football star, stood up suddenly from the back of the room. The folding chair behind him screeched against the tile floor, making half the audience jump. Nathan's heart stopped for a beat. Lucas was known around town not just for his athletic glory days, but for his rebellious lifestyle. He'd been in and out of toxic relationships, dabbled in drugs, and was notorious for his aggressive temper. Nobody expected him to show up at a talk like this, let alone stand up in the middle of it. With reddened eyes and trembling hands, Lucas took a deep breath. The entire room turned to him. "I'm sick of this," he blurted out, voice cracking with pent-up emotion. "I'm sick of pretending I'm fine. I'm sick of acting like none of this applies to me." The air grew dense with tension. People exchanged nervous glances. Sophia's hand flew to her mouth, and Nathan felt his own pulse quicken. Lucas's next words came out like an avalanche. "For the past 3 years," he said, voice shaking, "I've been sleeping with anyone who would have me. Strangers, friends, married women. It didn't matter. I told myself it was just fun, that it didn't mean anything. But every time I walked out of some girl's apartment, I felt emptier than before." A gasp rippled through the room. Even the teens in the back, normally glued to their phones, were staring wide-eyed. Lucas clenched his fists, struggling to keep his composure. "I hate who I've become," he choked out. "I can't even look in the mirror anymore. I try to numb it with alcohol, with parties, with porn, but nothing fills the hole." The silence in the room was deafening. And the worst part, Lucas paused, glancing around like he was searching for someone to anchor him. Tears streamed down his face now, and several others in the room began weeping with him. Sophia pressed both hands to her chest, tears flowing freely. In that moment, her pain connected with his. Different sins, same root, same ache for redemption. Without hesitation, Nathan walked toward Lucas. Placing a firm hand on his shoulder, he looked him dead in the eye. "Lucas," Nathan said softly but with conviction, "God's not done with you, not by a long shot." Lucas broke. His knees buckled, and he collapsed to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. Immediately, several people rushed to surround him, Sophia included. Some laid hands on him, others just knelt beside him, crying with him. What started as a teaching session had suddenly become a room-wide altar call. People from every corner were now standing, kneeling, crying, praying. It was raw, unfiltered, holy. Nathan glanced around and felt his own tears fall. This wasn't just another church meeting. This was revival, and it had started with one broken confession. The following week, something shifted inside Sophia Green. Before that night, her heart had been a graveyard of regrets and unanswered prayers. Every day felt like survival mode. Wake up, get the kids to school, go to work, smile at the right moments, collapse into bed, and repeat. Inside, though, she felt like a ghost haunting her own life. But after watching Lucas Morgan's public breakdown, something cracked wide open inside her. For the first time in years, she found herself replaying Nathan's words on a loop. "You're not too far gone." Driving home that night, Sophia pulled over to the side of the road, tears blurring her vision. She remembered her own past, relationships that left her empty, choices she swore she'd never make again, and the night she sat alone on her bathroom floor, feeling like God had given up on her. But now she wasn't so sure. That Sunday morning, against every instinct screaming at her to stay home, Sophia got her two kids dressed, grabbed her weathered Bible from the back of her closet, and drove to Harvest Fellowship Church, the same small brick building she hadn't stepped foot in for nearly 5 years. The moment she walked through the doors, she felt it, a holy weight. Not the weight of guilt, but the weight of God's presence. As worship music filled the air, she stood frozen at the back, too afraid to take a seat, too overwhelmed to stay outside. The lyrics pierced straight through the numbness she'd carried for so long. "You are more than your past mistakes. You are loved beyond your shame." Her legs felt weak. Without thinking, Sophia knelt down right there at the back of the sanctuary. Tears streamed uncontrollably as the memories of every bad decision, every compromise, and every whispered lie flooded back. But this time, alongside the guilt, there was something else. Hope. Meanwhile, across the sanctuary, Lucas sat in the front row, head bowed low. After last week's confession, he had made a decision. He started attending church again, got connected with a small accountability group, and even scheduled his first counseling session with Nathan. When Lucas opened his eyes during worship, he spotted Sophia kneeling in the back. Something in him stirred. Not attraction, but recognition. A shared war, a mutual ache. After the service, Nathan approached both of them separately. "Sophia," Nathan said gently, "it doesn't matter how long you've been away. This is your home too." And to Lucas, he offered just 3 words that carried the weight of heaven. "Keep coming back." That afternoon, Sophia sat in her car, holding her Bible to her chest, breathing in deeply like it was the first time she'd truly inhaled in years. Her perspective had changed. Where she once saw herself as damaged beyond repair, now she saw a flicker of a new identity. Loved, wanted, redeemed. This wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning of healing. The following Monday evening, Nathan sat in his office, staring out the window as the sun dipped below the Georgia pines. His phone buzzed, pulling him from thought. It was a text from Lucas. "Hey, would it be okay if I brought a friend to the men's recovery group tonight?" Nathan smiled. "Of course," he replied. 2 hours later, as the small group of men gathered in the church basement, the door creaked open, and in walked Lucas with Caleb Ross, a guy Nathan hadn't seen in years. Caleb had been one of the wild kids back in high school, the kind who laughed during chapel, skipped youth group, and bragged about conquests at weekend parties. But tonight, he didn't look like the same person. His shoulders slumped, eyes bloodshot, skin pale like he hadn't slept in days. As Caleb took a hesitant seat, Lucas patted him on the back, offering silent support. Nathan opened the session with a simple question. "What brought you here?" For a while, the room was silent. Then, with a shaky voice, Caleb said, "I'm tired of destroying myself." The air felt electric, heavy with both pain and possibility. That night's discussion wasn't polished or pretty. The men shared their darkest failures, affairs that wrecked families, addiction to pornography that ruined intimacy, secret struggles with identity and worth. But with each confession came something new, honesty and hope. At one point, Nathan turned to Lucas. "You've been quiet tonight," he said gently. Lucas swallowed hard. "I guess," he hesitated, then continued, "I guess I'm realizing I'm not alone in this. For the first time in years, I don't feel like some freak nobody can relate to. We're all fighting the same enemy in different ways." Nods filled the room. Then Caleb, eyes still moist, added, "I thought I was beyond fixing. But seeing Lucas here, hearing him last week, I figured maybe there's hope for me too." Nathan's heart swelled. This was it, the ripple effect he had prayed for. Later that week, Sophia received an unexpected call from Nathan, inviting her to a new women's support group called Restored Hearts. With trembling fingers, she agreed to attend. That Thursday, Sophia walked into a cozy room filled with other women, some young, some older, all with stories mirroring pieces of her own: broken trust, wrong choices, deep shame, and now, a desire for healing. By the end of that first meeting, Sophia found herself exchanging numbers with Eleanor, a widowed woman in her 50s who had battled her own history of betrayal and regret. They sat together afterward, talking long past sunset. For both Lucas and Sophia, this was the new opportunity they never expected. Not just forgiveness, not just survival, but real, lasting community. A chance to rebuild what sin had shattered. A chance to rewrite their stories. This time, with God at the center. Nathan watched all of this unfold with a quiet smile. This is why I never gave up on this town," he whispered to himself. Over the next few months, the changes in Lucas Morgan and Sophia Green became impossible to ignore. For Lucas, mornings that used to start with hangovers now began with quiet prayer and journal entries. He replaced late-night parties with attending Bible study and spending hours poring over scriptures he once mocked. The Lucas that people once crossed the street to avoid was now becoming a source of encouragement for others. One cold Saturday morning, Lucas stood outside Harvest Fellowship Church waiting for Caleb, who had agreed to meet him for coffee. As Lucas glanced at his phone, he caught sight of a notification. Day 90, no pornography. He blinked, barely believing it himself. 90 days of choosing to say no to the addiction that had gripped him for over a decade. The victory didn't come without battles. There were nights Lucas sat on the floor of his bedroom, fists clenched, sweating through the temptation. More than once, he had called Nathan, voice shaking, pleading for someone to pray with him before he made another bad decision. And each time, Nathan answered, reminding him, "You're not fighting alone." Meanwhile, Sophia's transformation was blossoming in quieter but just as powerful ways. For the first time in years, she started waking up before her alarm, sneaking downstairs with her Bible and a cup of coffee before the kids stirred. During one particular morning, as the golden sun poured through her living room window, Sophia stumbled across Psalm 34:18. "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." Tears streamed down her face, not tears of shame this time, but tears of gratitude. At work, her coworkers began to notice her smile lasted a little longer. Her laughter wasn't forced anymore. And when a younger colleague opened up about feeling trapped in an unhealthy relationship, Sophia gently offered to pray with her, a step she never would have taken months ago. But perhaps the biggest turning point came on a chilly Sunday evening. The church held a special testimony night where anyone who wanted could share what God had been doing in their life. Sophia sat in the back, heart racing, palms sweaty. When Nathan opened the floor for speakers, she felt her legs moving before her mind could catch up. Within moments, she stood at the front, facing the crowd that once felt like strangers. Her voice trembled, but she spoke with courage. "I spent years believing I wasn't worthy of forgiveness, that my mistakes defined me. But now I know that God's grace is bigger than my worst decisions." The room burst into applause, not out of politeness, but out of deep, collective joy. Later that night, Lucas approached her. With a sheepish smile, he said, "I think God's working on both of us." They laughed, awkward and genuine. Their friendship grew, not as a romantic story, but as two fellow survivors walking side by side toward healing. Through every struggle, every confession, and every step forward, both Lucas and Sophia learned this undeniable truth. Healing isn't about perfection, it's about progress and the one walking beside you every step of the way. On a cool spring evening, with the smell of blooming jasmine filling the air, Harvest Fellowship Church hosted its annual Night of Redemption, an event designed for testimonies, worship, and new beginnings. The sanctuary was packed, every pew filled, folding chairs lined the aisles to accommodate the overflow of people. For many, it was just another church gathering, but for Lucas Morgan, Sophia Green, and others like them, this was sacred ground. As the worship team sang softly in the background, Nathan Carter stepped up to the microphone. His voice, warm and full of compassion, cut through the stillness. "I don't know your story," Nathan began, scanning the room, "but I know this. Every single person here has something they're carrying. Some of you walked in tonight with years of guilt buried under fake smiles. Some of you, you're still living in secret cycles, convinced you're too far gone." The room fell silent. Nathan paused, his gaze locking with Lucas in the front row, and then shifting to Sophia sitting near the side aisle, her hands trembling slightly in her lap. "And some of you," Nathan continued, "you've believed the lie that God's done with you, that your mistakes have disqualified you from grace, that your past defines your future." Nathan's voice dropped to a whisper, rich with emotion. "But let me tell you something powerful. He's not done. Not with you. Not tonight. Not ever." People shifted in their seats, wiping tears from their eyes. Nathan extended both arms outward. "Tonight, some of you need to stop running. Some of you need to surrender. Right here, right now, you need to say, 'God, I'm done pretending. I'm done hiding. I want to come home.'" The altar filled in seconds. Lucas stood first, his heart pounding, but this time not with fear, but with surrender. Sophia followed, knees shaking but determined. Dozens more trickled forward, young and old, married and single, people from every walk of life, all walking toward the front like broken vessels drawn to the potter's hands. Some knelt, others stood weeping, arms lifted, hearts cracked wide open. Nathan's voice rose above the music. "There's room at the cross for every story, including yours." The atmosphere was electric with hope. Later that night, as people lingered long after the service ended, Lucas and Sophia sat on the church steps, gazing up at the stars. "I never thought this would be my life," Lucas said, voice soft. Sophia smiled, tears still drying on her cheeks. "Me neither, but I'm so glad it is." Together, they sat in silence, breathing in the cool night air, feeling something neither of them had felt in years: freedom. The stories of Lucas, Sophia, and so many others remind us of a timeless truth. There is no sin too dark, no past too broken, and no heart too far gone for the grace of God to reach. We live in a world eager to label people by their worst mistakes, but heaven sees us through the lens of redemption. Sexual sin, no matter how deep its roots, does not have the final say over our identity or our destiny. The chains that bind us, be it lust, shame, regret, or addiction, were never meant to define our future. God's love does not shrink in the face of our failure. It rises, it pursues, it redeems. True healing doesn't begin with self-improvement plans or empty promises to do better. It begins at the feet of Jesus, where confession meets compassion and brokenness meets breakthrough. No matter how messy your story has been, grace always writes a better ending. Starting today, take one bold step toward healing. Maybe it's sending a text to a trusted friend asking for accountability. Maybe it's deleting harmful apps from your phone. Or perhaps it's falling to your knees, whispering a prayer you've been too afraid to say: "God, help me start over." Get connected with a faith-based support group like Lucas did. Seek counseling like Sophia. Replace isolation with community. Replace secrecy with honesty. Replace shame with surrender.